Hey guys, welcome to the Let's Talk podcast. In this episode of the depression series, we're going to be discussing our causes of our depression and how they impacted us.
Yeah, we'd just like to say that these are our own thoughts and opinions, and we're just going to be speaking from our own experiences through our journey with depression.
Yeah, so from our other episode on what we think depression is, we mentioned in a very we give an overview of the causes of our depression. I know you mentioned 3 and I mentioned 1. So we'll just start with you in terms of your causes.
Yeah, so to start with, one of the causes I mentioned was that as a child I moved around a lot. So just to give a bit of a backstory to that, when I was very young, my dad was unfortunately killed, which meant me and my mum moved in with my nana and granddad, and I lived there till about the age of 6. And at that point, my mum then met someone, and we moved to Yorkshire. And she was with him for about 3.5, 4 years, and the relationship came to an end. And then we moved back in with my nana and granddad, who had moved to Wales. And then about a year later, she met her now husband, and we moved to where we live now. And when I was going through counselling, I explained about moving around a lot as a child, and she explained to me that it's not uncommon for children to sort of become, unhappy or develop a feeling of being lost, from moving around when they're young.
Yeah. So when you say you were moving around as a child, how old were you actually?
So as I say, we moved from my nana and granddad's when I was 6, from Altrincham to Yorkshire.
Yeah.
And I lived there till I was about 9, 10, and then moved to Wales and lived there for a year till about 10 or 11. And then from that age to 25, we moved to where we live now.
Oh, okay. I know you've always had this mentality that you used to mention to me that all good things must come to an end. Do you want to give a bit of background on that?
Yeah, so I remember something I used to say was if I was doing something fun or, I went somewhere that brought me happiness or joy, as my depression developed, I always sort of used to never really feel like I was living in the moment. It always felt like my mind was thinking, in an hour this will be over. Or I think one of the best examples I can give is, as I say, I'm very close with my nana and granddad, and I visit them a lot in Wales. And from a young age to only, recently, I used to go spend the weekend or however much time there. And then when I'd come away, my mind would be like, what if that's the last time you saw them? Because they're old. It's like,
Yeah.
they might. And that was one that impacted me a lot. And now I reflect, that was that mentality of all good things must come to an end, which is a saying I feel a lot of people have heard of, but it was my depression that took it and twisted it in a really negative way.
Yeah. That sounds like a really, sad way to think. Because, you're going into things probably not as enjoying them as much as you could, because you're already saying it's over before it's actually began.
I think that's the best way to put it. In my mind, my depression had twisted things to be like, it's over before it began. And
yeah, so what's the point?
no, literally, and that in a sense stems from moving around a lot, because in a sense when I was young, I'd sort of get somewhere and then my mind would be a bit like, how long will we be staying here? But I do want to make clear that my mum and my family have always took amazing care of me. They've loved me unconditionally and put me first. And it's not, in a sense, my mum's fault or anyone's fault that this happened. It was just, it's a passive, everything we go through has a passive effect, and an effect of moving around a lot is sort of feeling, a bit lost. And when my depression formed, that was a factor of it forming. And because of that, I feel my depression sought to twist that in a very negative way.
Yeah, I think as well, in terms of moving around, like I say, it wasn't necessarily you. It was your mum, but that's life. Things like that happen.
Yeah, of course they do. Yeah.
So it's it's not avoidable. So from moving around and this mentality of all good things must come to an end, what's your mentality towards that now in terms of all good things must come to an end? Do you still think like that now, or?
It's funny, I didn't really think about it, but sort of over the past year or so since coming off the counselling program, I've noticed it's something that just, it doesn't come into my mind anymore or occur. I've visited my nana and granddad a lot since then, and now I come away, or when I'm there, I sort of feel like I'm living in the moment, which is a beautiful feeling, because it was something that I lost for so long. And then when I come away, I look at it as like, more now, that was an amazing time I had, I can't wait till the next one.
Yeah.
Whereas previously it was like, I couldn't even think, I've just had a great time. It was sort of like, oh, it's over. See, I told you it'd be over. Oh, worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's really nice though, that you can feel like you're actually living in the moment now, not thinking about when it's over.
No, it is.
Because you know, to me from an outside, that sounds, you know, it sounds awful. I'm really frustrated.
It did, in a sense. It didn't feel like I was living. It was more I was just existing or just floating. Whereas now, again, it's starting to feel more and more each day that I'm living again.
Yeah, that's beautiful, like, as you say. Yeah. So moving on to the next one, friendships.
Yeah, friendship one was another one. Yeah.
So how did friendships impact your depression? Well, cause your depression and impact you?
Yeah. When I reflect on friendships I've had in life, you know, I feel there's, you know, I could go quite in depth on it, and I know we will in future episodes, but as sort of a brief overview with friendships, I felt more, I'd say, towards the back end of high school and into college, that I experienced sort of a roller coaster journey with friendships. And, you know, on reflection, I definitely, you know, will say it's a two-way street. And, you know, when I reflect on how I was developing as a person, I understand why certain things happened. But in terms of friendships, I started to develop this feeling that friends would pick me up and drop me off, in a sense. And I know that, in a sense, impacted me then, because it led to sort of like trust issues being developed and me putting barriers up.
So when you say, like, you know, putting barriers up, how would you define that?
I feel like I couldn't or wouldn't let people get close to me. I'd always stay reserved.
Yeah.
I wouldn't commit myself 100% as much as I might want to or think I was. And on reflection, I feel there'd always be a barrier. And I think a good example would be, you know, over the past few years since you moved back, we've grown so close. We're best friends now. And I remember when going through counselling, she asked me, you know, how would you feel if you lost Dan as a friend? And I remember saying, to be honest, I wouldn't be bothered.
Yeah.
If it fades, it fades, because that it become my sort of default mindset and expectation of friendships, that, you know, it'll come in, but it'll probably go out at some point.
It's like you refuse to get attached to them, because that, like, I feel like that barrier I had up was a fear of just them dropping you.
No, it was, and it was the worry that I don't want to get attached to these people or friends again, because I don't know how long it's going to last, in a sense.
Yeah.
And what's really beautiful now is that I remember she asked me the question about if I lost you as a friend, more to, you know, towards the end of the program, and I said, that's not even a question I'm going to answer, because it's not going to happen. And just to be able to, because now, you know, I do care about the friendship and don't want it to fade, whereas in the past it was sort of like, it probably is, so what's the point of getting attached?
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, it just shows the progress you've made, though, now that you can actually, you know, like, cherish friendships and not always be like an arm's length away.
Yeah.
It's like you're just in that friendship where it's like a two-way street as well.
Oh yeah, and it feels nice, you know, to have gained that back again.
Yeah. No, that's amazing, yeah. So then moving on to the one you mentioned that was more of a cause than the others, is relationships.
Yeah.
So how was relationships like a cause of your depression? And again, you know, how did relationships impact you?
Yeah. So again, just to mention my counsellor, what she helped explain to me was that my core vulnerability is relationships and dealing with attention. And when I reflect on that, I feel that stems from in, you know, sort of high school, when you come into a teenage, you know, that's when I, you know, first started sort of becoming interested in girls and relationships. And early on in high school, you know, I think when you're young, you can go through a lot of relationships, you know, in a sense, because, you know, the young relationships aren't the young love, in a sense. And then from, I'd say, probably about year 8, year 9 in high school up to about the end of college, in a sense, which is probably about 5 years, I received, you know, minimal to no attention from girls, you know, romantic wise and so on. And then from that, I, in a sense, developed a vulnerability, or, you know, that feeling of, I'm not attracted to anyone, no one looks at me like that way, and it made me feel, you know, like maybe not good enough or so on.
Yeah.
So then when I did gain attention, I sort of latched to it, because like, this is something I didn't think I'd ever get, or I've not had it for so many years, and it become a big vulnerability for me.
I suppose, you know, when, you know, you're talking there, you've had like a 5-year gap where you've probably not really spoken to girls, they've not given you any of this attention before, so it was probably really new.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to put it, and because it was new, I didn't know how to handle it or process it, you know, mentally and emotionally, and, you know, that contributed to a lot of issues that did arise.
Yeah, I could imagine that, like you say, like that probably excitement that you felt probably, overridden what what things you maybe should have done, and it could impact certain actions.
Yeah, no,
Would you say
definitely.
that?
Yeah, I think that you worded it perfectly in the sense that I didn't have a healthy connection. So, I'd latched to maybe the wrong type of attention, or just say get in a relationship with the wrong person just because they gave me attention, or got into a relationship for the wrong reasons because I was so focused on the attention and didn't sort of step back to assess myself or my situation in life and whether that was right or not to be getting into a relationship with that person or for them reasons.
Yeah. So going off what you just said, and you probably get so excited when you did speak to a girl, or when maybe you got like the girlfriend. Would you say, because you were so excited and this attention was new, that you'd get absorbed into that relationship?
100%, and I think by saying absorbed is that my focus and attention would go into overdrive onto that girl.
Yeah.
So in a sense, like friends or family would, in a sense, be second best, and my girlfriend would always be my priority and would come first, and I'd drop everything for her and so on. Whereas now I see that that's not healthy, and I realize I need a balance in my life, and I need to, in a sense, give my attention and love to all my loved ones equally.
Yeah.
And I realized that a problem that stemmed from this, becoming absorbed, was that, in a sense, you could maybe say I became a bit obsessive or overindulged, and that had negative impacts, because at points I feel like it could have been smothering towards the girl, which could be uncomfortable. And you need your own time and space, but I became so fixated in past relationships that it wasn't a healthy relationship, majorly because of how I was acting.
Yeah, I think it's just like from hearing that, it's so like surprising how those 5 years that maybe you wasn't interested in girls, they wasn't interested in you, and you had that gap, and how that probably affected your time after then, when you was getting attention with girls, you got in relationships, and how probably that 5 years contributed to your actions, and how you thought about women and girls in your relationship, etc.
No,
Would you agree with that?
100%. I think again you just worded it perfectly, in a sense of what seemed so innocent, or you didn't have a girlfriend for a few years, actually had such a big impact, but I didn't realize, in a sense, until it was years down the line, and I was able to take a step back and understand more, why I felt the way I did and acted and so on.
Yeah.
So, as we said, they were my three sort of main ones. And I think, I still don't understand how depression forms. It still complexes me, but I think, they were sort of like the three major events or impacts within my life. And I feel that I didn't maybe deal with them or resolve them fully mentally. And that's what allowed my depression to form. And when it did, it latched to them, because they were the big vulnerabilities, in a sense, and unresolved issues. And that's, in a sense, what fueled my depression. And it took them and twisted it as much as it could. And then from that point, it formed from that. And then anything else that came in, it then took in, just, and I feel that's how, in a sense, my depression formed.
Yeah.
So those were the main causes of my depression. What do you now understand was yours, and how did it impact you?
So the main cause for my depression was due to the loss of my mum at the age of 13 and a half, so it was quite young.
Yeah.
She passed away due to breast cancer, and she was suffering with that for about 4 years. And I know through that 4 years, there was times where it was told, she's kind of beat it, she got over it, and then she was re-diagnosed.
Yeah.
So I know from what I've heard, it was a very roller coaster, few years for my family.
Yeah.
When I think back at that time, though, I didn't really know that was going on.
So when you were at this age, obviously, like you say, you were very young. What did you think was going on? Can you remember sort of what you were feeling or thinking at that time?
I remember memories in terms of how I used to see my mum ill sometimes, like lay on the sofa. But again, I didn't really know why.
Yeah.
But I always remember, like, she'd have like down days in terms of the illness, and but she'd always try to put on a front and, to make the most out of it.
Yeah.
And, put the effort in 100%. But yeah, other than that, I just didn't think I really understood what was going on.
So do you feel that, when your mum sadly passed away at a young age, your mind didn't, in a sense, know how to process it, because you didn't really understand what had happened? And then do you feel that maybe as you got older and your mind started, mature, and you started to gain a better understanding, that your mind started to process it better, and this sort of started leading to things that happened further down the line?
Yeah, 100%. So I feel, like the cause, obviously, of losing my mum, like because I was so young and didn't have understanding, I feel like I didn't gain that closure.
Yeah.
And then as I did get older, I did, like seek to understand what breast cancer is and how that affects people,
Yeah.
what that actually does to someone. And I think that did give me a bit of closure in terms of what happened, because I didn't have a clue when I was so young, and when I actually started to gain a bit of understanding, it was like I get it now. Like, she it's not as if she left. It's not as if she just disappeared. It was like, no, she was suffering for quite a long time with this this horrible breast cancer.
So as you getting older and gaining this understanding, do you feel, as you said there, you gain closure and understanding, sort of the cancer side, but were there other aspects of losing your mum that you feel you didn't gain closure on or didn't resolve in your mind?
Yeah, so another one is that I didn't grieve.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to. I was 13. Even now, if you ask me how do I grieve, I feel like I don't know. Everyone grieves in their own way.
Yeah.
But then actually, as I was going through counselling, it was diagnosed as abandonment issues.
Really?
Yeah. And that took me by surprise, really, because my thought of, abandonment was if my mum did literally like pack her bags and left, just left.
Yeah.
Whereas because she's passed away, it took me by surprise that could come under the same like umbrella.
Yeah. Because it wasn't, do you feel it, because it wasn't her choice to leave?
Exactly, yeah.
You didn't really see it as abandoning.
Yeah. It's like, even now when I say, it's abandonment issues, I'm just like, it's crazy for me how that actually fits under that.
Yeah. So with these sort of abandonment issues and not grieving, what were some of the impacts that had on you that you now understand?
Yeah. So just to go over a few, I feel like the main ones are like trust issues and having very, very low expectations of others.
And what do you mean by that?
So they affected my friendships and relationships quite a lot.
Yeah.
And it's like I could go into a friendship and, I could trust them like 100%, but I would have such low expectations of them as well. So I would never expect anything from anyone.
Yeah.
Because I think it was a fear of, if I expect this of someone and they disappear or, they just leave tomorrow, it would hurt me.
So do you feel that you put maybe in a sense a barrier you don't want to let yourself get so far mentally because you knew if you went too far and say they left, it would hurt you and you didn't want to feel that sort of pain again after losing your mum?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what it is, yeah.
And was there any sort of other impacts you noticed from this?
Yeah, I think one that I kind of learnt and came to address, not really long ago really, is that I was very emotional, very over emotional.
And when you say over emotional, what do you mean by that?
So at first I'd say it's like my emotions were heightened.
Yeah.
But then I think the best way to describe it is that my emotions were probably out of control. Is that, for example, if I got upset, I'd get really upset.
Yeah.
Maybe get upset over things that is not a big deal.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I take a lot of things personally, and I was just so emotional in every situation. And like when I look back now, I'm like, oh my God, like,
Would you say your emotions became very unpredictable in a sense? Would you not really know how you're going to react in a moment where you sort of like, how's my mind going to react to this situation?
Yeah, exactly that. And I think that's what was quite frustrating, is that I just didn't have a clue where it was going to go. In terms of, I could just be like break down crying, or I could just be like, oh no, I could react to it sensibly. I think it was just the unknown.
So now, reflecting how you used to be and, how you are developing now, do you feel that you are a lot more in control of your emotions now and do you feel you've gained that closure?
Yeah, I feel like I have gained, I find it amazing that, like just like over 10 years later, I've managed to actually gain closure over losing my mum when I was 13 and a half. It might sound ridiculous.
No, it doesn't at all.
Because it's a long time, but no, I do feel like I am at true peace with it now.
Yeah.
And, I have that understanding. I feel like I've grieved in my own way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've definitely got that closure now.
No, it's incredible. And you should be so proud of yourself, because it is an amazing achievement. And, I know, we spoke many times about the bond you had with your mum, and to have gained that closure, and I know how deeply it impacted you. It's inspirational in many ways, and it's incredible. It really is. And yeah, I think that's a really nice point to leave this episode on.
Yeah. So thank you so much, guys, for listening to this episode. If you could give it a like and a share, that'd mean a lot. Please don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications button so you can keep up to date with any of our future episodes that we release. If you have any comments or thoughts at all, just please drop them below or on any of our social medias.
Yeah, and we're available on all social media platforms under the username @LT Podcast Online. We're also available on all podcast directories such as Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, as well as YouTube. If you check out our description below, it's got all our links and more information in there. And as Dan said, thank you so much for listening. We hope to catch you in the next episode, and take it easy, guys.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.